violated on a daily basis because no society, no community, this provincial parliament, no business, no government department will be able to function without women. Is that okay to say? I'm going to repeat it again. No community, no society, no sporting club, not even this provincial parliament, any entity would be able to function sufficiently without women. Because we have seen that women 70 years ago and even prior have risen to the task. Our parliament is led by a capable woman in our secretary, who is our lead official, and she is with us here today as well. So in 1 minute, we will commence, and then it will be my honor to then invite a capable woman from this particular provincial parliament who will lead the first session. And then I will break down the theme and we will get going, but there's a few people that is still logging in online. So in 2 minutes or in 1 minute and 54 seconds, we will commence. Is everyone okay? Thank you. In the desk. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Regan Allen. I serve as the Deputy Speaker in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. I bring regret from the Speaker that he is unable to be here today. He is representing the Western Cape Provincial Parliament at the funeral of the father of the LOGB. Our thoughts and prayers is with Minister Simmers and his family during this time as well, and the Speaker would have loved to be here. As a provincial parliament, one of our key strategic priorities is to ensure that we have continuous stakeholder engagements. We are firmly of the view that no government entity, no government department can ultimately do it alone. When we work in silos and when we fail to talk and discuss matters, that is when we see governance risk. So once again, to each and every participant that is here today, please feel welcome. Thank you for your attendance. I see a number of delegates is also online. Thank you for your presence. The newly appointed Western Cape Minister responsible for social development is also joining us online, but I will hand over at this particular time because we have heard continuously that when will black ever be black enough? Wanneer gaan genoeg ooit genoeg wees? So we know that these intergenerational discussions will go a long way towards making sure that we not only bridge the gap, but we have constructive conversations and that your conversations and your inputs here land in our standing committees. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, this provincial parliament, together with Mr. Minister Winvogel, I almost said Minister Winvogel. Am I prophesying now? Member Winvogel, Minister Maree, and the chairperson of the Standing Committee, Benedicte van Midden, a motion was passed to ultimately establish an ad hoc committee. Now, I grew up with a speech impediment. I couldn't speak properly growing up, so I can speak a lot now to make up for the times I couldn't speak. Sometimes my voice is even echoed double just to make up for the times I couldn't speak. I will go through some of the ground rules soon. But that is conversations and matters that we are needing ultimately to bring to the fore. And this provincial parliament is an institution that caters and that makes sure that we create this space. So once again, thank you for your attendance here today. I'm looking forward to hearing the inputs. I'm looking forward to the discussions and ultimately how we can see some of your inputs are then implemented. I never imagined growing up in Mitchell's Plain, going to the GC Williams house in Athlone, Bridgetown, growing up with a dad that made difficult decisions. I love him. I respect him. There was 38 years of him being abused, of him being abusing drugs. It hasn't been easy. He's been free for the last 9 years. My older brother followed him, and they even did it together. So I could have followed that pathway, but there was a lady, and that lady is no longer with us. But if it hasn't been for my mom, I don't know where I would have been today. And as we celebrate and commemorate Women's Month, we are so aware that women play such a vital role. And I have seen it in my own life, in the lives of many others. So once again, thank you. I'm also delighted to see some men in the room as well. We will never exclude men from the room because we know we all have a role to play. Are you all still comfortable? And I'm breaking protocol by not sitting in that seat because sometimes we must do stuff differently. We've been doing things over and over in the same way, expecting different results. We have seen some of our members now rising to that particular task of making sure that things are done differently, but with the emphasis of seeing progress. So some of the announcements that I would like to just elaborate on, that the virtual attendees kindly be reminded that once you have been acknowledged by the facilitator or the chair of the session, you are then allowed to unmute and also raise your hand by using the raise your hand function. For those that are in the chamber, I sincerely trust that you are aware how the microphone work. There is a white button that you press, a red light will appear, and then you will be able to give your inputs. If these were men here now, I would have gone through all of these ground rules. But I know that women instinctively understand certain protocols and certain conventions. So once again, I'm going to now hand over to the first chair of the first session. It's member Vin Vogel. I met her in the year 2019 when she became a member here. She hails from the Overberg area and she has been a committed member serving on multiple um, committees within the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. And one thing that we do here is that we ensure that we ultimately, as a Western Cape Provincial Parliament, not only cater for members that is in the governing party. So member Vin Vogel is a member of the opposition, but we know that working relationships go a very long way. Hence, it is my honor to hand over to member Vin Vogel as the chair of the first session. Ma'am, you are more than welcome to take that seat if you so wish. You might be more comfortable. Would we all like member Vin Vogel to sit here? So So, Member Van Vogel, I will request then, with the powers conferred in me, um, that is, don't take that comment out of context. And the power lands with all of us, ultimately. So, Member Van Vogel, I'll hand over to you as the chair of the first session. But Now you can take the seat. Thank you so much once again for your attendance.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I think it needs another hand of applause. His story normally touches me whenever he speak about his past. It's so amazing of what he becomes today. He's a deputy speaker. But let me start by greeting our guests, our leaders, representatives of women and community organizations, young women, mothers, grandmothers, and all the women of the Western Cape who has joined us today. It is a great honor to welcome you to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for the important intergenerational dialogue. Speaker, you were saying that we have how many men amongst us? Three, I think three. But it's wonderful to see men amongst us. And it's always nice when men speak up for us as women because they are born of a woman. Our theme, honoring the past, celebrating the present, shaping the future, speak to all of us. We cannot understand where we are going unless we remember where we come from. We cannot celebrate our progress without acknowledging the struggles that made it possible. And we cannot shape the future unless we are prepared to take responsibility for it. Today, we give women of different generations an opportunity to listen to one another, share experience, and ask what we can do together to build a better future for women and girls in our province. As we meet during Women's Month, we remember one of the most powerful moments in our history. On 9 August 1956, thousands of women marched to the Union Building to protest against the system that's thought to control their lives and take away their freedom. They came from different backgrounds. They were African, colored, Indian, white women. They were mothers, workers, professionals, and community activists, united by a common purpose. They stood together and declared, "You strike a woman, you strike a rock. Watiti abafas, watiti mokoto." Those women showed us what is possible when people organize themselves and stand together. The lesson of 1956 remains relevant today. When our communities face serious problems, we cannot remain silent or allow fear to divide us. We must come together, organize ourselves, and confront the challenges that affect our lives. We must also remember the countless women whose names may not appear in our history books. Women working on farms, domestic workers, factory workers, and women in township and rural communities who held families together through poverty, discrimination, and hardship. Our mothers and grandmothers carried families through some of the most difficult periods in our history. We are standing on their shoulders today. What we are is because of them. But today is not only about remembering the past. It is also about celebrating the women who are making a difference in the Western Cape. Today, we have women leading in government, business, education, health, agriculture, science and technology, civil society, and their communities. We see women starting businesses, creating employment, farming the land, teaching our children, caring for sick and elderly, and taking leadership in their communities. We see young women entering careers in professions that were once close to them, and women in overcoming enormous obstacles to build better lives for themselves and their families. These achievements deserve to be recognized and celebrated. But as we celebrate, we must also be honest about the challenge that women continue to face. One of the greatest is gender-based violence and femicide. Too many women and girls continue to live in fear and suffer abuse in their homes, relationships, workplace, and communities. According to the latest crime stats, more than 11,000 sexual offenses, including more than 9,000 rape, were recorded in South Africa in just 3 months between April and June 2026. In the Western Cape, more than 1,500 sexual offenses, including over 1,100 rapes, were recorded during the same period. This is unacceptable. A woman should be able to walk down the street, go to work, use public transport, and return home without fearing that she may become a victim of violence. We must also confront the broader violence affecting our communities. In just 3 months, the Western Cape recorded more than 1,000 murders and more than 1,000 attempted murders. Women often carry the greatest burden when crime and gang violence enter communities. Too many mothers live with fear that their children may be recruited into gangs, draw into violence, or become victims of it. When a young person is murdered, a family loses more than a life, a mother loses a child, and a community loses a future. We have a responsibility to build communities where our young people have hope, opportunity, and a reason to believe in their future. We must also confront the economic challenges facing women. Many still face barriers to employment, equal opportunities, finance, land, and opportunities to start and grow businesses. For women living and working on farms and in rural communities, these challenges can be even greater. Their voices and experiences must not be forgotten when we speak about women's empowerment. Women empowerment must mean real opportunities. It must mean access to education, skills, employment, finance, land and markets, as well as meaningful voice in decisions that affect their lives. This brings me to the institution in which we are gathered today. The Western Cape Provincial Parliament is a parliament of the people. The parliament belongs to you. You are welcome to come here, and please do not come only when you are invited to an event such as this one. Come when your community has problems. Come when you have a concern or proposal. Come when you believe something needs to change. I would love to see the women gather here today, return to this parliament, organized through your community structures, women organizations and formations. Come with your petitions, approach the committees of the parliament, write to committees chairpersons and say, we are experiencing these challenges in our communities and we would like an opportunity to engage and find solutions. That is what democracy is about. The women of 1956 did not wait for someone to tell them that they were allowed to speak. They organized, petitioned, marched, and made their voice heard. We must continue to that tradition. Parliament should not be a place that people see only on television. It should be a place where ordinary people feel that they belong. This is your parliament. Use it. Bring your concerns here. Let us hear from you, engage with you, and work together to find solutions. As we look to the future, we must also think about the young women who are watching us today. What kind of Western Cape do we want to leave for them? We must build a province where every girl has the opportunity to dream and to fulfill her potential. A young woman should be able to choose her own path, whether she wants to become a farmer, a teacher, entrepreneur, a doctor, an engineer, a politician, or a community leader. We want a future where women have access to education, skills, land, finance, opportunities, and where women and girls are safe in their homes, workplaces, and communities. We must also support one another. We must open doors for the next woman, mentor young women, share our knowledge, and celebrate another's success. Sis, when one woman rises, she must remember to help another rise with her. That is why today's dialogue is important. An intergenerational dialogue is not simply about older women speaking to younger women. It's about listening to one another. Older generation bring experience and wisdom. Younger generation bring new ideas and energy. We need both. The past give us lessons, the present give us responsibility, and the future give us a duty. As we begin today's program, let us remember the courage of the women who came before us, celebrate the women who are building our communities today, and commit ourselves to a better future for those who will come after us. Let us carry the spirit of 1956, not only in our memories, but in our actions. When women are abused, let us speak. When our children are being lost to violence and gangs, let us organize. When women are excluded from economic opportunities, let us demand changes. When our communities face challenges, let us come together. I hope that many of you will return to this parliament. Come back, organize, come with your petitions, engage with communities of this institution. Tell us what is happening in your communities, what you need, and what you believe can be done differently. Because this is a parliament of the people. This is your parliament. Our past gave us strength, our present give us responsibility, and our future give us a duty. Let us honor the past, celebrate the present, and together shape a future in which every woman and every girl in the Western Cape can live with dignity, safety, opportunity, and hope. I thank you. Thank you so much. I will then now start to introduce our panelists who are going to engage with us. And according to Kaya, you only have 7 minutes per person to do what you are supposed to do. But let me first introduce Advocate Cindy Abdul. There is, can you just lift your hand and give her a hand? Then from the Justice Desk Africa, Corky Julie, give her a hand. From Africa Unite, I met beautiful ladies from Africa Unite, Alice Dolan. Yes. And then our secretary to Provincial Parliament, a very strong woman, Member Reagan. Right. Warm welcome once again. And I know you are capable of this, to do what you are supposed to do. We are actually privileged to have you amongst us, because wherever you go, I know you are making those changes that I speak of. You are those voices for those voiceless women. And I will then give immediately over to our first speaker, Advocate Cindy Abdul. Both of us are from the rural areas, eh? We are coming from a farm. Ne? So over to you, Advocate.
Good morning, Deputy Speaker, honourable members, fellow panelists and guests. Thank you to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament for inviting me to contribute to Theme 1. I participate today as a State Advocate at the Worcester Tutuzela Care Centre, representing the National Prosecuting Authority's Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit, known by its acronym SOCA, S-O-C-A. I speak through a rural lens, firmly within the SOCA mandate. That rural lens is also personal. I work in the Cape Winelands and I hail from the Langeberg rural area. I know that distance is not abstract. It can determine whether education, a clinic, police station, a court, or an opportunity itself is truly within reach. When we honor the past, we must recognize the women who carried communities long before formal systems reached them. Grandmothers, aunts, mothers, agri-workers, teachers, faith leaders. They already noticed harm, protected children, accompanied victims, and held families together. They became the first safety net. In the rural areas, we all know that one auntie that is always there, always helping. Much of that work was unpaid, unrecorded, and unsupported. The history they navigated includes the legacy of colonial and apartheid spatial planning and labor arrangements. That legacy still shapes where people live and how far they are from services. Rural communities continue to navigate transport, housing, language, and other economic barriers. In agricultural areas, these aspects affect whether a woman can safely report or remain in the justice pathway. Equality must therefore somehow travel to where rural women and girls actually live. So, honoring the past means recognizing that resilience is not enough. Resilience cannot remain a substitute for access. Our now, equality must be reachable. Today, equality is still not experienced equally. A rural woman may have a legal remedy, but before she can use it, she must consider so many things. For example, calculate taxi fare, lost wages, childcare, housing, language, stigma, and whether she will be safe after disclosure. And what we sometimes call apathy may instead be a lack of capacitation. A witness who cannot return to court, complete a witness fee claim process, attend counseling, or keep a medical appointment may be dealing with poverty, trauma, transport, work hours, fear, or simply not understanding what the system requires. Research on family systems and distorted care reinforces this. Behavior cannot always be evaluated and understood in isolation. Care dependency, housing, security, food, family, shame, and control may become entangled. Social context, therefore, does not excuse crime, but it must inform an effective criminal justice response. Geographical distance turns a right into a journey, as services may be far apart. Child pregnancy trends show the rural girl child especially at risk of grooming, exploitation, statutory offences, school dropout, and dependence. So, this is where the SOCA NPA mandate and leadership matters in the now. Our work is anchored in prosecution across sexual offences, domestic violence, trafficking in persons, maintenance, child justice, older persons, and related matters, and the legislation that supports this, with the Children's Act providing critical care and protection and reporting mechanisms. Although I focus today on rural women and girls, SOCA and the Tutuzela Care Centre service pathways are for any person who falls within the mandate and requires such services. This rural focus is institutionally anchored. Our Special Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Bonnie Karikamu, provides national direction to ensure no one is left behind, including rural communities, and drives expansion of services and access to those services. In the Western Cape, our Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions for the SOCA unit, Ms. Lizelle Africa, together with our senior state advocates, continually assess rural trends and service gaps so local delivery mechanisms can align as far as possible with the Tutuzela Care Centre model. Because strong legislation opens doors, but a multidisciplinary implementation framework determines who can walk through those doors. These mechanisms means that the rights must be made usable. That is why a Tutuzela Care Centre protocol matters. Its practical principle is simple. No wrong door. A victim should not lose access because she first disclosed at a school, clinic, hospital, police station, or wherever. The response must connect safety, medical care, evidence integrity, psychosocial support, prosecution, court preparation, and follow up. And where there is no Tutuzela Care Centre building, equality of service cannot mean waiting for a building. SOCA works with stakeholders to create locally adapted pathways to the same standard of care. In the Western Cape, this includes public private service delivery partnership models to expand gender based violence service access. Equality becomes operational when every handover has a named person, lawful pathway, and follow up. Prevention models disrupt potential harm. For example, We have our child pregnancy interventions to promote positive life choices. Mandatory reporting must be enforced, and prosecution where facts disclose grooming, exploitation, or sexual offenses. Domestic violence protocols can sometimes seem reactive, but it is also preventative through our approach for early risk detection. SOCA also ensures that public education closes legal knowledge gaps where reporting duties and protective mechanisms are scattered across legislation. Social context training are provided to prosecutors so that decisions made remain connected to lived reality. So, what is next in the intergenerational action? For the future we want, we must interrupt what should not be inherited. Learned violence, trauma transmission, rigid gender norms, silence, and stigma. And we must intentionally pass on what should be inherited knowledge, agency, dignity, safety, and access. Older women and grandmothers remain trusted aunts, trusted adults, and early detectors of risk, while themselves needing support, especially where they carry the Oma second. Adult women and community leaders can challenge harmful norms, support disclosure, strengthen safety networks, and connect families to services. Young women and girls can lead through peer support, positive choices, early help seeking, and digital citizenship. Even the place where community is happening has changed. Prayer meetings, church circles, and neighbors' homes still matter. But today, a WhatsApp group or
Member,
similar social media platform can also mobilize support, circulate verified service information, and narrow geographical distance. Digital transition is unavoidable. We must use technology to extend care,
member,
not
you are
amplify.
nearly there. Are you done?
Not yet, honorable
Your
member.
minutes
I'm
are
almost
up.
done. Yes, I see. Just in
We will
wrap
give you
up.
last year.
Just in wrap
Wrap
up.
up, please.
Honor the women who carried the past. Recognize the rural woman's unpaid care, courage, and community leadership. Support the women shaping the present. Build systems the next generation can reach. Use protocols, partnerships, trend analysis, public education, and social context training. Keep prosecution connected to lived reality. SOCA and the NPA's contribution is to link law, victim centered care, multidisciplinary accountability, and access. The next generation must inherit access, not only survival skills. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next panelist will be from Justice Desk Africa, Koki Julie. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone. It is a privilege to be here today as part of this Women's Month engagement and to have the opportunity to reflect on where we have come from, where we are today, and where we still need to go. When we speak about women's contributions to equality and inclusion, particularly in South Africa, it is impossible not to think about the women of 1956. On the 9th of August, 1956, approximately 20,000 women marched to the union buildings to challenge the extensions of past laws to women. They came from different backgrounds, races, communities, and political organizations, all around a shared belief that they should not have to live under a system that restricted their freedom and dignity. We remember women such as Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Rahima Musa, and Sophie Williams de Bruyn, but we must also remember the thousands of women whose names we may never know. These women demonstrated something that remains incredibly important today. Change does not always begin with people who have power. Sometimes it begins with ordinary people deciding that they will no longer accept injustice as normal. Their contribution was not simply the march itself, it was the courage to organize, to speak out, to stand together, and to demand something different for themselves and for future generations. And when we look at the position of women today, we can see that their actions created opportunities that many of us now benefit from. Women are participating in politics and leadership, accessing education and professional opportunities, speaking more openly about issues that were once considered too uncomfortable to discuss. We have stronger conversations around gender equality, women's rights, bodily autonomy, and GBVF. But I think that Women's Month requires us to be honest. We have made progress, but progress is not the same as equality. There are still girls who grow up being told indirectly or directly that there are certain things they cannot do because they are girls. There are still women whose voices are not taken seriously. There are still communities where women and girls experience violence, discrimination, and inequality. And gender-based violence continues to remind us that changing laws and policies is only one part of creating an equal society. We also have to change attitudes, behavior, and the way that people understand power, relationships, respect, and gender. Now, this is particularly important in the work that we do through Bokodo. Bokodo works with girl survivors of gender based violence with a focus on empowerment and leadership development. The goal is not simply to provide girls with information. We want girls to understand their rights, recognize their own value, and develop the confidence and skills to become leaders in their own right. Through the program, conversations are held about things like personal boundaries, safe and unsafe touch, GBVF, power and privilege, human and children's rights, advocacy, and challenging harmful norms. And one of the things that stands out to me is that young people are not simply waiting for adults to solve these problems. They have ideas, they have opinions, they recognize injustice, and they want to make changes in their schools and communities. But often, what is missing is the opportunity, the confidence, the resources, or simply a space where someone is willing to listen to them. And I think that this is where we need to look when we talk about opportunities for future progress. If we want to continue the work started by the women who came before us, we need to invest in girls and young women as leaders. We cannot wait until young people are adults before we decide that their voices are important. We need to create opportunities for girls to lead now. This could mean giving them opportunities to facilitate conversations in their schools. It could mean supporting them to organize campaigns around issues that affect their communities. It could mean creating spaces where they can engage with decision makers and speak about the issues they experience themselves. And importantly, it means not simply inviting young people into spaces to say that we included them. Inclusion means that their voices actually matter. There is a difference between given a seat at a table and being given the opportunity to influence what happens at the table. I also believe that future progress requires us to look seriously at how we address gender based violence. We cannot only focus about what happens after violence has occurred. We need to ask ourselves, what are we teaching children and young people before violence happens? What are we teaching boys about masculinity and power? What are we teaching girls about their bodies and their boundaries? Are young people being taught what consent means? Are they able to recognize unhealthy relationships? Do they know where to go for help? And perhaps most importantly, are we creating communities where speaking about these issues are encouraged rather than silenced? It has to start in our homes, our schools, our communities, and our institutions. If we want to see a future where women and girls are safe, respected, and able to participate equally, then prevention has to start early, and it has to involve everyone. The response for gender equality cannot sit only with women. Men and boys have an important role to play in challenging harmful gender norms, calling out violence, and creating environments where women and girls are respected. Institutions also have a responsibility to create meaningful pathways for young women to participate in decision making. And as organizations working with young people, we have a responsibility to ensure that empowerment is not just something we talk about, but something that young people experience. When I think about the women of 1956, one thing that stands out to me is that they were fighting for a future that they could not fully see. They did not know exactly what South Africa would look like decades later, but they knew that the world they were living in was not good enough. And I think that that is a powerful lesson for us today. We may not know exactly what the future will look like either, but we do know that there are things that are not good enough. We know that girls deserve to feel safe. We know that women deserve to have their voices heard. We know that young people deserve meaningful opportunities to participate in discussions that affect their lives. And we know that equality cannot simply be something we celebrate during Women's Month. It has to be something that we actively work towards throughout the year. So as we reflect on the contributions of women in the past and present, I think we also need to think about the legacy that we want to leave. The women of 1956 did not only leave us a historical moment to remember, they left us an example of courage, collective action, and leadership. Our responsibility is to take that legacy forward. For us at Mokodo, that means creating spaces where girls can recognize their own power, challenge injustice, advocate for themselves and others, and grow into leaders in their own right. And perhaps the question we should leave ourselves with today is not only what did the women before us do for equality, but rather what are we going to do with the opportunities that they fought to create? And perhaps more importantly, what kind of world are we going to create for the girls who come after us? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Koke Julie. Then our next panelist is Alice Dolan, Africa Unite.
Thank you so much. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Dylan Mitchell in his absence, Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable Regan Allen, my brother from Mitchell's Plain, honorable members, distinguished guests, colleagues, and all women and girls joining us this morning, looking absolutely beautiful. I greet you this morning. It is an honor to take part in this intergenerational dialogue. I represent Africa Unite, an organization born from young people taking action. In 2001, young people from New Crossroads and Nyanga came together in response to xenophobia, violence, and discrimination against migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. With the support of IDASA, Africa Unite was launched in 2003 and became autonomous in 2004. For more than 2 decades since, we have worked to prevent conflict, promote social cohesion, protect human rights, and empower young people in the spirit of Section 1 of our Constitution, which commits South Africa to human dignity, the achievement of equality, and advancement of human rights. Africa Unite is proof that what happens when ordinary people recognize a problem and recognize too that they have the power to act. Our theme today asks us to reflect on women's past, present contributions to equality and inclusion, and to explore the possibility for future progress. For me, this conversation about legacy, responsibility, and opportunity is a journey I want to trace through 3 words. Let's take it with me. I call it the then, now, and the next. Then, the women who created our possibilities, as many of our panelists have said, the women of then challenged the limits placed on them and expanded what was possible for those to follow. Charlotte Maxeke understood that equality could not be legislated alone. It had to be built through education, participation, and leadership. One generation creates the possibility, and the next must build on it. Many of us now sit in rooms and institutions because women before us refused to accept that those spaces did not belong to them. A struggle that shaped the very preamble of our constitution, which commits South Africa to a society founded on democratic values and social justice. Then what is the now? What are women doing with these opportunities? Today, women are not only asked to be included, women are creating inclusion and should create more inclusion. We see this in parliament, government, civil societies, and business, supported by institutions such as the Commission for Gender Equality, established under Section 187 of the Constitution to promote, protect gender equality. At Africa Unite, women are not only beneficiaries, they are the facilitators, the mentors, the leaders, creating opportunities for other women and young girls. It is one thing to tell a girl that your voice matters. It is another to give her a platform where her voice can influence something greater. This is why our Africa Unite School leadership clubs matter. Learners take on presidential and ministerial portfolios and engage with governance, education, critical thinking, and community issues, and give practical effect to Section 29 of the Constitution, the right to basic education, and to the National Youth Policy 2020 to 2030. This recognizes young people as active citizens, active participants, and not passive beneficiaries. We must challenge the phrase that you are the young leaders of tomorrow. Tomorrow can simply be an excuse to postpone their leadership. Young women and girls are leaders of today. This is affirmed by Section 28 of our Constitution and by the African Youth Charter, ratified in South Africa in 2008. Let me talk about Onikayo Ngantweni, a 17-year-old girl from Gardens Commercial coming from Guguletu. She has progressed in the past 4 years from a parliamentarian to a deputy minister to a minister to now leading a president and being the president of Gardens Commercial Africa Unite School Leadership Club. She is proof of what happens when a young girl is given the opportunity to exercise her potential. That is equally being practical. So for me, what is the next? What must be built for future progress? If women of the past open these doors, the women of today are widening them. Our task is to ensure that the next generation simply has a genuine pathway through it. We need to identify challenges together and come up with possible solutions together. We can no longer work in silos. The leadership pipeline must begin early. in schools and continue through youth organizations, university, and parliament in line with the National Development Plan 2030. This places the active participation of women and young people at the center of an inclusive society. Africa Unite has brought the Africa Unite School Leadership Club learners into this very parliament, giving life to Section 118 of the Constitution, which requires provincial legislator to participate in public involvement. A girl cannot easily aspire to a space she has never been allowed to see herself in. The future and representation for transformation means that this demands more than counting women in leadership. We must ask, are women being heard? Are girls being prepared to participate? And most importantly, are they self aware and know how to manage themselves? Do they critically think? Do they know what it means to be an active citizen? And can they lead in future and today? Who are we preparing to take our place, women of the now, representing on these panels? The greatest contribution of a woman in leadership is not that she becomes the woman heard in the room. It is that she ensures young girls hear her voice and that they are not the last to be heard. This is the spirit behind the Women Empowerment and Gender Equality Bill, now before the Parliament, which seeks at least 50% representation of women in decision-making structures and behind our international commitments as well, all of which call for substantive, not merely formal, achievement of women equality. In closing, the then, the now, and the next, when we speak of then, let us honor the women who expanded our possibilities. When we speak of now, let us recognize that women turning these possibilities into opportunities is just for us to do for the next. And when we speak of what is to come for the next, let us remember that she's already here. She's in our classrooms, in our communities, watching us, deciding what she believes is possible for her. Let us be positive role models. Perhaps the measure of our progress should not only be how far have women come, but how much further can we help the next girl to go. The women of the then open the doors. The women of the now must keep them open and widen them. The girls of the next must be equipped to walk through it capably and in time to open doors for others. We must learn that social cohesion is human interaction. Equality is not achieved when one woman succeeds. It becomes real when her success creates possibilities for others. At Africa Unite, good governance and resilience, self-awareness builds a great leader. So holistic psychosocial support helps them to become self-aware, manage themselves, make responsible decisions, build long-lasting relationship, and also have social awareness. In fulfillment of the vision of our constitution and what it sets before us, South Africa should be a place where a young girl and a young woman can belong peacefully and safely. This is the journey from the now, the then, and the next. Thank you for taking it with me. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I also need to acknowledge in our presence the Minister of Safety and Security just next to you, member, Minister Marais. So give her a hand. She's with us here today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Good morning, Deputy Speaker, honourable members, colleagues, and most importantly, all our invited guests, both physically present and online. Today, I'm going to draw on a privilege that members have when they sit in the House and they debate, and we call it freedom of speech. So I hope I'm going to be protected and I'm not going to be taken to task after the speech for what it is that I've said. So as we reflect on women's past and present contributions to equality and inclusion, we should really resist treating history as a ceremonial backdrop. Women have been organizers, caregivers, workers, innovators, public representatives, and community leaders, often while confronting laws, institutions, and social norms that undervalued their contributions. The question before us is therefore not only how far have we come, but whether the systems we lead are producing meaningful equality on women's lives on a daily basis. Now, globally, there has been much progress in terms of the rights of women, More girls complete schools. I don't know how many of you will remember Malala Yousafzai of Pakistan, who said education is not just for men, and I, as a young girl, want to be educated. We also remember Greta Thunberg at the age of 15 sat in front of the Swedish parliament and said, the future environment we want must be better than the current environment that we have, and therefore challenged politicians to ensure that proper laws are put in place. Women hold more parliamentary seats, and discriminatory laws have been repealed or reformed in many countries. Yet progress remains uneven and vulnerable to conflict, climate shocks, poverty, and resistance to women's rights. I think South Africa is getting its first taste of what climate change can mean, both in the Western Cape. We have hardly had any rain. We've seen what's happened in Eastern Cape, in KZN, and it really means that we need to look at how this is going to impact not only a society as a whole, but also access to services and services that women require. The 2025 Global Gender Assessment warns that on current trend, 351 million women and girls could still be living in extreme poverty by 2030. It also shows the opportunity before us. Closing the digital divide could benefit hundreds of millions of women and girls, reduce poverty, and add substantially to global economic growth. The global lesson is clear. Equality is not a side issue. It strengthens democracy, peace, resilience, and economic performance, and the next phase must move beyond representation alone. Women must have a voice, influence, safety, access to capital and technology, and the power to shape the decisions that affect them. This requires gender-responsive laws and budgets, reliable data, accountable institutions, and purposeful action on the care economy and violence against women. In my 27 years in the legislative sector, and I'm not going to reveal my age, I have heard this phrase gender sensitive budgeting a gazillion times, and I have yet to see it being activated. And maybe this is a challenge for the members that are present here and Deputy Speaker. WCPP likes to be a trendsetter, and we have been acknowledged across the globe for various programs that we have hosted. And I'm hoping that we are going to be the first legislature to actually activate a gender sensitive budgeting framework, not only activate it, but implement it. In the South African context, we know that our story is grounded in courage, from the women who resisted colonialism and apartheid to the historic 1956 Women's March, and the women who helped shape our constitutional democracy. Women have insisted that freedom must include dignity, equality, and participation. Our constitution and legislative framework provide a strong foundation, and women occupy visible roles across politics, public administration, business, academia, and civil society. However, legal equality has not yet become a lived equality. In the second quarter of 2024, women's labor force participation stood at 55.8% compared with 65.6% for men, while the female employment rate was at 35.8%. So there's another task for public representatives to look at and focus on. Although women increasingly enter fields traditionally dominated by men, they remain more exposed to unemployment, informal work, and limited access to finance and markets. Political representation also requires sustained attention, and we know that political parties have established a 50-50 principle of representation, but that must also find its way in terms of what we see in the representation, both at the National Assembly, National Council of Provinces, and Deputy Speaker and I just had a quick sidebar earlier. So the WCPP, in terms of our workforce, we have 55% female representation. In our senior management team, we have 4 women and we have 2 men. Maybe that explains all the unqualified audits that we get every year. More urgently, gender-based violence and femicide continue to deny women safety, freedom, and opportunity. South Africa has adopted significant laws and the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, but implementation seems to be constrained by uneven coordination, underfunding, and weak monitoring. Our national task is therefore to convert rights into results through effective policing and justice, survivor-centered services, economic inclusion, gender-responsive budgeting, and transparent oversight. From a provincial progress must be understood across our diverse communities, and we've heard the references from coming from small towns, rural areas, metropolitan Cape Town. Women contribute to households, to farms, to schools, to health services, tourism, technology, creative industries, informal trade, and public leaderships. They are encouraging signs of economic inclusion, where women-owned businesses secured 34.69% of the Western Cape government procurement spend in the 25-26, exceeding the 30% benchmark for a second consecutive year. This demonstrates that public procurement can be a practical instrument of empowerment when access, transparency, and supply development work together. From a provincial parliament perspective, we must lead by example. It's gender-sensitive self-assessment, and here I'm referring to the fact that the WCPP has been one of the first parliaments to complete the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association gender self-assessment. And it does show positive practices, including women in leadership, and our current work policy practices that encourages a family-friendly institution. It also points to unfinished work, applying a gender lens to lawmaking, oversight and representation, and ensuring that we have representative committees, strengthening collaborations with Chapter 9 institutions such as the Commission for Gender Equality and Civil Society, and establishing clear responsibility for implementing and monitoring reform. Our oversight over provincial priorities should therefore be practical and measurable. First, scrutinize every budget for its impact on women and girls, and I want to add youth in that category. Second, expand women's access to procurement, finance, skills, mentorship,
Can you conclude, Secretary?
especially in the rural areas and growth sectors. Third, strengthen integrated trauma-informed services for survivors of violence and hold departments accountable for coordination and outcomes. Fourth, design digital inclusion and responsible artificial intelligence measures that protect women from bias, disinformation, and technology-facilitated abuse. Fifth, improve representation and accessibility, including for young women and women with disabilities. I never knew that that prop was so intimidating, but now I get to experience it. In conclusion, as we honor women's contributions, we must recognize that remembrance without reform is insufficient. Future progress will depend on whether institutions translate commitments into budgets, services, opportunity, and accountability. The Western Cape Provincial Parliament can lead this change by making equality visible in every law we pass, every rand we oversee, and every community we serve. Let us ensure that women are not merely included in existing systems, but are equal partners in redesigning them. That is how reflection becomes responsibility, and how responsibility becomes lasting progress. Maybe just on a last note to the young women that are present here today, I want to leave you with one last message, and this comes from former President Nelson Mandela. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So the message I'm going to leave with you is education, education, education. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Deputy Speaker, I think when it comes to speaker position, I failed it big time. When it comes to time, I'm too lenient.
Can I just correct Member Van Vogel? She has done an amazing job facilitating the first session. Can we give her a round of applause? I don't want to be a typical male, but what I will do now is to give some direction to Member Van Vogel to remain in the chair for the facilitation, to allocate 25 minutes, alternate between online and in the room for any comments and inputs, because at the end of the day, we will compile a report, and these inputs and comments will ultimately find expression in the work of Parliament. For example, the sentiments echoed now by the Secretary in terms of gender-based sensitivity budgeting, that will find expression in our budget committee. So if you are able to facilitate, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, Deputy Speaker, no problem. I just have two questions to the panelists because, if I may. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Now, to the advocate, the one van die plaas. Ons twee kom van die plaas af, né? Advocate, the two of us come from rural communities, and we know the life realities of women in these communities. women in rural areas face particular challenges. So you have spoken about the important role of Tutuzela care centers as safe and integrated space for survivors of sexual abuse. What do we know about I mean, like, and when it comes to rural areas, we don't have such centers. What do you suggest or propose? What can we do to assist those rural communities?
Honorable Member, as I've mentioned, we do have the SOCA NPA unit is responsible for the rollout and expansion of Tutuzela care centers across the country as well as provincially. In the Cape Winelands specifically, we've got 3 Tutuzela care centers, one in Stellenbosch, Paarl, as well as Worcester. And then there are programs underway for the identification of other Tutuzela care centers to cover the rural areas. The one for George, it also covers and supports the rest of the surrounding area. So when a Tutuzela care center is located within a public health facility, it renders services to any person that falls within the mandate that have access to that particular center. If I can use Worcester as an example, it caters specifically for Rossenville, the Dorings, and Touwsrivier, because in those towns there are no hospital. So they will access their primary health care point will be Worcester Hospital. So the Tutuzela Care Center is then located there. In terms of accessing those services, this is where the localized protocol comes in and our multidisciplinary approach that we take with our stakeholders that form part of the operation of the services that are rendered. Department of Social Development, the SAPS, the South African Police Services, Department of Health, and our civil society organization. So if a client walks in at the police station in the Dorings, SAPS police in the Dorings will take that client and ensure that she is driven through to Worcester, pulling out manpower, a vehicle from that particular community, together with our community structure that we have, that is part of SAPS's victim empowerment rooms, which the Department of Social Development also ensures are kept running, and that they have extended to include the Gender-Based Violence Ambassadors Program with. So that victim will be accompanied by somebody, come to Worcester Hospital, handover is there, services are rendered, and for the return, Worcester SAPS will assist the Doring SAPS for the transport back. So we make sure that the services are covered. And I just want to correct, it's not just for sexual offences, it's for all matters that fall within the SOCA mandate. So whether it's trafficking in persons, and the services are also extended to include specifically domestic violence clients through our domestic violence protocol that we have within the hospital. So once a victim is identified in the emergency service section as a victim of domestic violence, and then she will be transferred after she's been clinically stabilized to the Tutuzela Care Center to make sure that safety planning and aftercare psychosocial support services are provided.
Thank you so much, Advocate. We are against time, so I will ask the panelists to just try to summarize it, because I think the Deputy Speaker just gave us 20 minutes not 20 minutes, actually 5. Then to Mrs. Corky, Julie, you made a powerful point that inclusion is not simply about giving young women a seat at the table, but giving them a genuine opportunity to influence decisions that affect their lives. Given the work you do with young people, what practical steps must government, communities, and institutions take to move beyond symbolic participation and create a meaningful pathway for girls and young women, especially those from marginalized and rural communities, particularly in decision making, and emerge as leaders in their own rights?
Am I audible? All right. Just to make sure that I've captured your question, you're looking at practical steps or maneuvers for the government to create a pathway forward for proper inclusion. I think most importantly, it's for young people to be given the platform to speak, to be out loud. So at Justice Desk, through our level system, when you graduate through the program, you have already been given all of the tools to be able to step forward, to be able to articulate all of your issues and address these issues. For example, last year we did several marches to Parliament. I think we even came here and handed over memorandums of understanding to different ministers, including Minister Maria, actually, and giving them the ability to articulate is the most important part, in my opinion. And I think the government needs to be able to create different platforms, different capacities, if not organizations, wings, where young people have the ability to step up. But I also need to, and I need to make sure that it is understood that access is most important. Because it's all good and well saying that these programs exist, but they need to be more widespread. It's not fair that not everyone has access to a Africa Unite, to a Justice Desk Africa, when there are young people everywhere across the country that have the spark, that have the spirit, that have the need. And I think that's most important.
Correct. Thank you so much, Kaya. Um, yeah, we already have government initiatives such as after-school programs and the MOD Foundation of MOD program, which provide important platforms for young people. My question is, how can organizations such as Africa Unite in the Western Cape government, especially when it comes to the MSC presence today, they just that beautiful woman there next to the Minister of Safety and Security. So I want to understand how can you work together to connect, strengthen, and expand these programs so that we reach more young girls and women, especially in the disadvantaged communities, and ensure that opportunities created for them lead to meaningful participation, leadership, and real influence.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker. I think for us as an organization, the most important part is firstly to be informed and informed about the outcomes that we want to see firstly as a province. When we speak about young girls and what their future look like, we have to have a general consensus that come together on what type of women we want to see, not only in this province, but also in our communities and in our country. So I think the first thing is that we are on the same path as a civil society and government together, then we can come up with programs and implementation structures where these programs can be rolled out. For instance, we're working with girls starting at the age of 12. We put them on platforms so big that this year, one of our students, only at the age of 15, was invited to the State of the Nation address. This is because we gave her a platform in a room with the Government Committee on Basic Education. And this young lady was one, informed. She knew the outcome of where she wanted to be, the task that was at hand. So I feel like if we can only come to the spaces where these young people are, they know exactly what their challenges are. They know exactly what possible solutions they want to have, but I feel that all the time they have to come to the fore to prove to government that their solutions are worth it. I think that brings me back to the first point I made, that we need to have the same consensus when it comes to what is the future that we want to see, that we need to take the the word of these young people who know what they face in their schools, who know what they face in their communities, and come together as institutions to take that forward.
Thank you so much. And then my last question to the Secretary. Secretary, you are a young Black Indian woman, highly educated and capable, and you now serve as the Secretary of the Western Cape Parliament, the most senior official in this institution responsible for leading the administration and staff. And I think we are very proud we can celebrate that achievement. Um, in my in many ways, your presence in this position represents the possibility that women of 1956 and generation of women who came after them fought to create. But your own success also raises an important question about the women and girls who are still waiting for their opportunity. From your position as leadership, what is your responsibility and what response or let me rather put it, at what responsibility does this institution have to ensure that your achievement does not remain an individual success, but become the pathway for more young Black women to enter, lead, and exercise real power with public institutions and decision-making space?
Thank you very much.
Spaces.
Thank you very much for the question. I now understand how the Premier feels when he has to answer questions to the Premier without notice. And thank you for the young part. I think maybe the story, I did indicate I've been in the sector for 27 years. It really starts with the individual and what your passion is, and whether you are passionate about making a change and making a contribution. I think we've had examples in the WCPP to create more opportunities for access, because I heard the responses around creating access to opportunities. So as a provincial parliament, our role is to represent the interests of people, which means that we need to have people that are active and that are responsive, and that come to the fore. So we've developed quite a few programs from the public education perspective to teach and educate, particularly our youth, but also women, even older persons, and to develop programs to make sure that people understand the role and responsibilities of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. We have got an active citizen journey, and we must credit Sunel and Kaya for developing this. What my message to the team was, this must not be a ceremonial journey. It must really be a journey where we take a group of people through a whole parliamentary calendar and a process from the State of the Province address right up until the end of the year when we deal with annual reports, so that you can actually live the parliamentary journey and get a first-hand experience around how it is that members exercise oversight, how it is that members execute their public representative responsibility from the day that the Premier makes his speech and sets out the provincial plan for the year, up until the time that Minister Bartman says there's a budget allocated to this, and when committees engage. So we've taken a cohort, the first cohort of active citizen journey colleagues, which includes a representation of civil society as well as youth through this process. And my challenge to the team was, should this be a one-year program or should it be a 5-year program? How much can we teach and learn within that space? What was important was also to make sure that we have participants who are able to take that story and take it back to their communities. And in the process, what we've done is to create ambassadors for the WCPP, to take that story back to a farm, to take it back to a rural community, to take it back to a school in the Western Cape, and to make sure that through that process, that knowledge and information is shared. So, Chair, the question was really about how do we create opportunities for young girls and women, and I think that this is an example where we can replicate this exercise. We've also established a Western Cape Youth Parliament. And again, it's not a ceremonial youth month engagement where we call the youth together, sit in the chamber, we make speeches, and off they go. And then next year we do another youth parliament with another group. The idea was to establish a youth parliament for a 5-year term, to have representation from all the different districts, And I must tell you, these mini politicians is going to give some of our senior politicians a run for their money. They were in this very chamber discussing real issues impacting youth, from drugs, from education, from access to resources. So this is a continuous program where they bring issues from their communities to the WCPP and to the WCPP's attention. Again, it's not a tick box exercise. Resolutions are tabled, resolutions are submitted to the relevant departments, and Mrs. Xu is very tenacious. She follows up on those resolutions to make sure that is feedback, because that's one of the areas that some grouping civil society has complained about. We come, we present, we don't hear from you again. We hear from you in the next cycle. And we really thought it's important to close those gaps and to make sure. One of the representatives of the Western Cape Youth Parliament had the opportunity to participate in the Commonwealth Parliament that was hosted in New Zealand, Australia.
Sydney,
Sydney.
Australia.
Yeah, so she had the opportunity to represent the Western Cape Youth Parliament in Sydney, Australia, and produced a brilliant speech. I'm not sure if she's here today. I know she was invited, and I'm hoping she's going to share that message with all of you. It's the process in which we start sharing information, we start educating, but the journey is a two-pronged journey. We can continue to push, but the recipient of the information must be equally passionate about taking the message forward. I've answered your question in an indirect way to share a WCPP example, but I think it's an example that can be expanded. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ek gaan nou vir u die hand gee sodra die deputy speaker oor gaan vat. Ek gaan teruggee, maar ek wil net hê ons moet goed dit doen. Dankie mevrou Forrie en Kaya. Julle het my allow to be part of this beautiful program with such amazing women, beautiful women. It's a mixed generation. It's one of those programs that you want to be part. And dan vergeet jy van tyd, you are forgetting about time. You just want to engage on issues. But I want us, while I'm moving to my seat, because the deputy speaker must come and take his seat here, and then you will then facilitate the way you will engage our facilitators of, let's say, our panelists. All of us must start by, you strike a woman, you strike a rock. Let us say it all as women. And we want the men also to join us in this one. You strike a rock. It's very, I don't feel you. Let's do it together. You strike a woman, you strike a rock. Thank you so much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Van Vogel. Colleagues, how we will do this at this particular juncture, I see that you have changed the clock again because I'm standing between input as well as a short tea break. So how we will do it with 20 minutes on the clock, I will then see if there's any inputs or any comments from any of the persons on this side or on that side. I'll take a round before I recognize hands online. So inputs on the first theme. I see one. Do I see any other hands? Do I see any other hands? I see number two, number three. Do I see any hands online? If you are able to use your raise your hand function, we will do it in that order. After you have spoken, number two will then automatically speak, and then number three, without me interjecting again. I see then after number three, we will go online, and the final speaker will be the newly appointed minister responsible for social development. She is online and her hand has been raised as well. Ma'am, I recognized you.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I just want to say one thing. I'm Marguerite Holzhausen from the Trauma Center for Survivors of Violence and Torture. I've also worked before in local government, and I think that's one thing we must talk about is how do we put community and especially women in the center of how we govern um, our communities. On a local level, how can a young woman in Delft, how can a young woman in Crossroads, in Bonteheuwel have a voice? How do we create those spaces where they can speak, where they can be heard, where their inputs and their ideas can be supported? Not only heard not only to hear what is the needs, but also to hear what people are already doing and how can government support what people are doing? But because people in these various communities, they understand the dynamics of their communities. And often they just have to hear what is going to be done in their communities. But nobody's asking them, what are you currently doing? What are you busy with? How can we help you to be successful in what you're doing? So that's only what I want to say, and especially these kind of spaces where we have a lot of young women would like to hear what they have to say, and how can we maximize uh, to hear those voices that's here today, but also how to be structure government so that provincial and national and local government work together to draw from communities and to listen to communities and to support communities in addressing these very challenging situations that people are having to go through every single day. Women are every day we are threatened, every day we feel unsafe, every day. And people know what they have ideas, they have solutions, but there's no it's very much top down our government. Sorry to say, unfortunately, there's not a nice space for communities to raise their voices. Thank you so much.
Hi all. So I'm also going to be speaking out of the rural perspective, ironically, because my mother is Advocate Abdul. I am from the Cape Winelands region, and I think that we should really focus more on young girls and women in rural areas. I was previously involved with the Office of the Western Cape's Children Commissioner in Christina Numdu's term. And there was a lot of metro representation. We were very little rural children. And the way that metro children got involved with the office was different to how us as rural children got involved. I mean, from personal experience, I got involved through an advertisement on Facebook of the office. Metro children, Christina came to these schools. There's organizations in metro. There are organizations in the rural areas, but it's not as it is in the metro. Um, I was fortunate enough, age 15, I represented Western Cape's Children's Commissioner and all children in South Africa at the United Nations 96th Convention on the Rights of the Child in Geneva, Switzerland. And that was massive. That was massive. And all three of us that represented was from rural areas. Myself from Worcester, Sulaka, Plettenberg Bay, and Ruan from Rietpoort, which is close to Van der Reynsdorp up in the Western Cape. Um, I just feel that metro children have a bit of an advantage in that way. They have more access to services, to facilities, to organizations. And I think we should start going forward. We should shift the narrative and shift our way of looking and perspective to rural children, because I think there is the biggest lack and need for organizations and for representation in spaces and areas like these. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Avin Gunguman. I'm from the Justice Desk, Society with the Mbogoto program. Also, to touch base on what you said, I think we should also focus on every woman or girls out there who actually don't, not even don't, who struggle to have access to report rape, crime, sexual harassment, and actually when as we women actually gonna take action on what's going on and what are we surrounded with? Obviously, we're not surrounded with safety. Nobody knows when we come out to those doors what's gonna happen to us. But my question is, when are we taking actions to what's happening in our communities, the rural places, obviously, and for them, how can they actually have access to these kind of organizations, such as the Justice Desk, the African United? How can they to voice out. Let's continue to be the voice of the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you able to give your name for the record as well?
My name is Rushan Abdul.
Thank you so much. To the hybrid online, I see that there is in order of an account listed as CM. Number 2 will be an account listed CD. Thereafter, I will then firstly recognize the Minister, Minister Kaiser Philander, in that order before I go to the final hand that raised 2 seconds ago. Account listed as CM, you are able to unmute.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Casey Marman, and I am honored to be part of this intergenerational dialogue. I am a representative of the West Coast District, carrying not only my own voice, but the voices, experiences, and aspirations of the young women I represent. When we speak about women's progress, we often speak about the names written in history books, the women who led movements, challenged injustice, and changed the world. But today, I also want to remember the women whose names may never appear in history books, yet whose contributions have shaped generations. The mothers who sacrificed so their children could have better opportunities. The teachers who encouraged young girls to believe in themselves. The women in our communities who lead quietly every single day, creating change through courage, compassion, and resilience. Equality was not built only by famous women, it was built by ordinary women who refused to accept that their dreams were limited by their circumstances. As young women today, we are standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. The opportunities we have, the ability to lead, to study, to speak, and to participate in spaces like this exist because previous generations fought for a more inclusive future. However, our responsibility does not end with celebrating the progress we have made. We must ask ourselves, what kind of world are we creating for the young girls who will follow after us? The greatest tribute we can give to the women before us is not only remembering their struggles, but continuing their work. May we become the generation that does not only ask for a seat at the table, but also creates more tables where every woman has a place. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the speaker. There was a big round of applause of people clapping in the chamber. You may have not have been able to hear it, but thank you so much for your input. Account listed CD.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Um, the role of women in South African history is important not simply because of what they did, but because of what they struggled teach us today. They teach us that progress is never handed to us. We might fight for more equality in our society. As young South Africans, we have responsibility to honor their legacy not only with speeches and celebrations, but through action and commemoration. We must build a country where every woman and girl can live safely, pursue their ambition, and have an equal opportunity to succeed. The women who came before us helped shape our history. It is now our responsibility to ensure that their future, through their fight, is heard. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We will proceed. Account listed MJ.
Good morning. No, not Michael Jackson. My name is Malise Jogiet. I am with Women for Change. Thank you so much for the invite. I think this is a very important discussion. I think there's a few things that I just want to highlight. We speak a lot about equality, getting young girls access, rural areas. And the question for me always comes down to one thing. What, how is our educated impacted by the trauma in family systems? How are we educating our younger generation, the young girls who are in this room, around what happened during apartheid and how that's passed down generationally? A lot of the cases that we work on from a Women for Change perspective are obviously intimate partner violence, but a lot of that is also affecting the children in those homes. One of the major concerns I think that we have is that we're not seeing a turnaround of these cases, mainly because understanding things like coercive control, understanding the psychology behind it is not highlighted in a lot of these meetings. In my personal work, I've seen every day that when we discuss issues around coercive control, what's happening in households on a daily basis, that it actually changes the way that women see their lives, their relationships, and how they live in society. Even in corporates where abuse is not being addressed in HR systems, people are going to work every day with the scourge of abuse from home. When they get the education around things like coercive control, the psychology behind it, the patterns behind it, it fundamentally changes how they operate and also allows them to have a little bit more autonomy over their lives, their decision making, and their finances. We're not seeing a shift in this space, and every time this conversation comes to the fore, it gets dismissed as not an issue. I understand that there's a lot going on the ground. We predominantly serve people online, especially girls under the age of 16. And the amount of rape cases that we get and sexual abuse cases under the age of 16 are happening in their homes by family members. We know this already. But if they have the education to understand the patterns, they also then go outside of the world when they are 18, 19, going to university and understand how to avoid that. Because a lot of the cases that are coming through are people who are being raped and sexually abused to the second, third, and fourth time because that education wasn't given to them the first time. So, in places like schools, in places like police stations, in places like hospitals, when they are opening cases, what I just want to understand, is there going to be a point when this education is made available in those rooms so that they are not vulnerable to these circumstances again? Because there's a much higher likelihood that a girl that was sexually molested at 9 years old is going to be again in her teens and in her 20s, because fundamentally, whatever they inherited from their family system will be carried with them into adulthood. And for me, on a personal level, I believe that's the only way that we can shift how this happens and change the future generations' understanding of why we have such high numbers of abuse and sexual offenses in the country. Thank you.
Sorry, Deputy Speaker, just that will very much be addressed in terms of theme 2. So I would like for people to, to stick around because that's where we're really going to address gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fouchier. Ms. Fouchier is the director responsible for this entire program. Thank you that you are able to read my mind. I would have made that comment. Colleagues, we would not want to interrupt or stop any person from giving input or comments. Please note that this is a space in order for you to participate and to provide input so that it can find expression in the work of Parliament, essentially. With 10 minutes remaining, I'm going to acknowledge Minister Kaiser Philander.
Good morning, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Am I audible?
You are loud and clear, and also from the rural area all the way from Drakenstein.
Baie dankie adjunk speaker en met trots so. U is gegroet, ook my agbare kollegas in die raadsaal vandag. But more importantly, Deputy Speaker, the powerful voices in the room today, and I really want to sincerely apologize. I think you know that I would want to be in chambers, but unfortunately, due to circumstances beyond my control, I am not able to. I also want to thank my collega van die platteland, Lid Windvogel, vir haar wonderlike chairing of the first session. And thank you very much to the panel, Deputy Speaker. Advocate Abdul, Koki, Ms. Alice from Africa Unite, also our Madam Secretary, Ms. Beck. And I think, Deputy Speaker, what stood out for me today is really the clear link between response and prevention. I want to thank Advocate Abdul. Thank you for bringing the rural lens into this discussion. I think it's very important. And you again today reminded us that an effective response, particularly in rural communities, require integrated services such as SOCA and the Tutuzelas. And survivors should not be re-traumatized by having to move from pillar to pillar, but that they should be able to receive medical, psychological, and the legal support in one safe and supported space. And this is a powerful reminder, honorable members and colleagues, that we cannot do it alone. We realize that collaboration is indeed essential. Deputy Speaker, as was also highlighted, we cannot only respond after harm has occurred. We must also invest in early prevention programs and in youth development initiatives that intentionally engage both young girls and boys. I think that is essential. And we need to start these conversations early. And that was stressed again today, because prevention must begin before the harm occurs. And that really reinforces an important point, that collaboration, and I want to stress this, collaboration is not optional. Adjunk Speaker, ek wil ook vandag die volgende sê, dat baie van ons probleme in ons gemeenskappe, die uiteindelike oplossing vir daardie probleme is juis in ons gemeenskappe. Regering sal dit nooit alleen kan doen nie. En ons het die geleentheid, en ek wil dankie sê vir die Wes-Kaapse Provinsiale Parlement vir hierdie geleentheid en die platform wat hulle vandag geskep het. Want ek dink nie ons kan langer wag om van hierdie geleenthede gebruik te maak nie, maar ook nie net te praat nie, maar tot aksie oor te gaan. Maar dit gaan vereis dat ons almal hand aan die ploeg slaan. Government, civil society and community-based programs must work together if we are serious about creating safer communities. We have indeed a bigger role to play in creating and strengthening these spaces and in building stronger collaboration with all institutions across the Western Cape. And let us continue to lead the change through every law we pass and every opportunity we have in government. It is our responsibility. And it must be measured not only by what we do today, but by the lasting impact we can leave in our communities. Something that really stood out for me today, Deputy Speaker, is the sentiment that was expressed, the spark, the spirit, and the need. That is really something that sits with me today and something that I will carry forward. Because I think not just from this conversation, in our daily conversations with our communities, with our young people. En dit is verskriklik hartseer as dit lyk asof ons jong mense opgee op die lewe. Dit lyk asof hulle hoop verloor het in die lewe. Adjunk Speaker, as ek luister na die storie, as ek kyk na my eie lewe, my eie storie, then it's evident, ons kan nie opgee nie, want ons weet waarvanaf ons kom. Ons weet wat ons in ons lewe moes deurmaak. Tye het verander, dit het moeiliker geraak, maar ons is die hoop om vir ons jong mense te kan bewys dat dit is absoluut moontlik. So today that really sticks with me in terms of the spark. The spark is there, the spirit is there. and the need is expressed for us to collaborate en om dinge te maak gebeur. Deputy Speaker, there's no time like the present for everybody to become actively involved. And I've put this challenge to my team. You know, I'm just a day over 1 week in office, but I've expressed the need and I'm putting the challenge to them. But at the same time, I'm also putting the same challenge to all of you present today. When this opportunity from the Western Cape Department of Social Development comes to you in September, please don't think twice. Get involved, step forward, and become part of the solution. Deputy Speaker, I firmly believe that while the challenges in our communities, as I said, it may be significant, but the solutions, and I remain resolute and steadfast when I say, the solutions are also within our communities. Today, I acknowledge the views, the concerns, and the challenges expressed here today. And from our side, the mission is already in motion. And we will continue to work with our partners to ensure that the voices we hear today, that those voices translate into meaningful action. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I look forward to the rest of the session. And I look forward the next time we engage, it will be an in-person engagement, and we will address these issues and the views expressed here today, Deputy Speaker, but all in the spirit of collaboration and creating the opportunities, but also fleshing out those challenges that's hampering our young people, especially to prosper in life. En dat ons saam sal opkom met oplossings en kan vorentoe beweeg met aksie. Baie dankie, Adjunk Speaker.
Baie dankie, agbare Minister. Colleagues, how we will proceed at this particular time, we will adjourn in 1 minute, we adjourn. We will be back in the chamber at 12:05. Then we will proceed with theme number 2. I want to, at this particular time, Ms. Advocate Abdul, thank you so much for your attendance here today. Ms. Julie, Ms. Dolan, as well as Member Winvogel and our secretary. Thank you so much for your inputs. Let us adjourn at this particular time. We will have a closing slot where we will capture recommendations and resolutions, like I've indicated, which will find expression in our Parliament. So once again, we will at this particular time break for 15 minutes. Thank you. As we are awaiting two or more of our participants to join, it is my distinct honor at this particular time to introduce the lead for this particular time slot, and that will be the chairperson of the standing committee responsible for police oversight and community safety, a former councillor, a former MACO member, attorney by profession, hails from the Helderberg area. Your hands and mine for member Benedicta van Minnen.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm very glad to see everyone here today. I think this is a really, really important topic that we need to really spend a lot of time on and really think through really, really well. The chair is going to be our Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety, Minister Henri Mouret. Now, she works really extensively with those groups on the ground that make a difference, the neighborhood watchers that walk at night, the CPFs that walk at night in dreadful circumstances, in all kinds of places across the province, the city, the townships, the Cape Flats. And what I always find humbling about those groups is the fact that the vast majority of them are women, mothers, daughters, grannies. There are ladies in their 70s who do this. Until recently, in my constituency in the Helderberg, one of our best walkers was Auntie Doreen. Auntie Doreen has just turned 80. Maar daar is niks in daai dorp wat sy nie weet nie. She knows who's doing what. And she feels nothing. She will come and say, daai kind, daai kind. She talks, and that's what makes a difference. But as we kick off, I just briefly want to give you a personal story that I think is important because it describes what we're up against. So my mother was an architect. She was the only woman to graduate in her class at UCT. Her mother was a medical doctor. But my mother's first husband, my biological father, was essentially a violent drunk who used to assault her. And I was an only child. And trust me, when you're an only child, when your earliest memories of seeing your mother getting chucked out of a car, having her nose broken, being thrown out of the front door into the rain, and you're 3, 4, 5, 6, there's nothing you can do. You're totally disempowered. But what happened? My mother stayed. She did not leave. She was educated. She was working. She was technically empowered. Her mother was a doctor. And for many years, I've wondered why that was the case. And I think it's because all those organizations, all those bodies, that whole structural network that we talk about, they don't reach out. They don't try to help women. The church told her that she couldn't leave her husband, that divorce was a stigma. Her mother wouldn't talk about it. The village wouldn't talk about it. The community wouldn't talk about it. Now, we lived in a small town in the Boerland where everybody knew what was happening in everybody's lives. So our problem isn't just the perpetrators of domestic violence. The solution isn't just the constitution and legislation and the police. The solution is transforming society, that the organizations and bodies that should be supporting women actually do support women. Eventually, my father left. So my mother was able to have a redemptive arc, remarried, and had a happy life. But that is in the minority. Millions of women across this country don't get that opportunity. And it is up to all of us to make sure that we are that support structure, that that sort of thing doesn't happen, that women have options to walk away. And that's why I think it's important that our minister talks about some of those organizations and structures that help with that. So let's welcome Minister Henri Mouret. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Benedicta, for sharing that personal story. It's not always easy, but thank you so much for that. Then good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all our distinguished guests, our colleagues, panelists, and members of the community. It is a privilege to facilitate this important discussion under the theme From Constitutional Promise to Social Reality. Reflection on women's rights and the persistent challenges of gender-based violence in South Africa. Our Constitution represents one of the most important foundations of our democracy. It makes a clear commitment to equality, human dignity, freedom, and the protection of fundamental rights. Since 1994, South Africa has made significant progress in developing laws, policies, and institutions aimed at advancing women's rights and addressing discrimination and violence against women. But the difficult reality is that the existence of these constitutional protections has not eliminated the violence, inequality, and discrimination that many women and girls continue to experience. So today, I would like us to move beyond simply acknowledging the progress we have made. We need to ask some difficult questions. Where have we succeeded? Where have we fallen short? Why does gender-based violence remain so deeply entrenched despite our constitutional and legislative protections? And most importantly, what must we do differently to ensure that constitutional rights become a lived reality for every woman and girl child? We have an excellent panel representing government, civil society, gender equality, and social development. And I would like to begin by looking at the journey we have traveled since the adoption of the Constitution before moving towards the gaps that remain and ultimately the practical actions required to address them. So, Pelisandi, I would like to start with you. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
A good afternoon to all the honorable members with us today and online, my fellow panelists, and the gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen in the gallery. Let me say and allow me to say, Amandla, awe to. Thank you. My name is Pila Sandem Kuzo. I am an attorney by profession at the Equal Education Law Center. And so today, I speak from the perspective of a a non-governmental organization that works with learners on a daily basis. Correctly so, the Constitution gives us safeguards and guarantees such as equality in terms of Section 9, human dignity in terms of Section 10, and safeguards us from all forms of violence in terms of Section 12. We have acts, policies, regulations, guidelines, and other legal frameworks that give effect and meaning to this Constitution. However, despite the strong legal framework, the lived reality of South African women is defined by systematic insecurity. There is a reason why South Africa is dubbed as the rape capital of the world. Now, this brings a very chilling effect when we think of how the South African Constitution is revered as the most progressive and transformative in the world. Over the years, we have seen an increase and an expansion of gender-based violence, especially in our schools. School-related gender-based violence not only threatens a myriad of learner rights, but also poses a significant barrier for learners from enjoying, accessing safe, inclusive, and quality education. Like gender-based violence, school-related gender-based violence is inherently a gendered phenomenon. It is fundamentally based on the unequal power relations and a staunched gender and patriarchal norms that are perpetrated and perpetuated by society between men and women, boys and girls, and people of diverse genders. Now, the issue of gender based violence has many nuances to it, deeply socio-economic in nature, and that impact not only the reporting but also the response mechanisms that we see in society. Now, these nuances are also nuances that we can see in school related gender based violence. There is a girl sitting at home right now without sanitary towels, and because of that, faces a harsh decision of choosing between dating an older man or asking the uncle who will collect tonight. Due to poverty and fear of shame and embarrassment, parents often find themselves in having to encourage their children to pursue relations with teachers and accept payments in the form of money and groceries in exchange not to report these cases. Now, then, we need to accept that gender based violence or school related gender based violence is not a minor social byproduct. It is a critical security threat to our youth. It constitutes a constitutional, educational, social, and government crisis that should not be only faced by the criminal justice department. Then we should ask ourselves, why do these gaps exist? The first one, it's the institutional and implementation failures, where you go to the police and victims suffer secondary trauma by how police assist our victims. We have under-resourced families and family courts, backlog in terms of forensics, and low conviction rates. We have entrenched patriarchal norms, which deeply are ingrained in our societal beliefs regarding male dominance and traditional gender roles, which continue to compromise female autonomy because we are not humans but things to be owned. We look at the socio-economic disparities where women remain disproportionately affected by poverty, unemployment, and unequal pay. Then, lastly, the intersecting vulnerabilities, where legal equality often fails to address the specific compounded risk faced by non white, poor, rural, or disabled women who lack access to support, services, and shelter. Now, addressing some of these issues means immediate mandatory vetting of educators and staff members, perhaps the dismissal and the criminal prosecution of any educator or staff implicated in sexual harassment, sexual assault, and or abuse. We need to consider the employment and the deployment of social workers to schools, especially in our vulnerable areas, so that they're able to handle disclosures and offer psychosocial support. And perhaps lastly, establishing a coordinated state-funded safe scholar transport, which includes the vetting and processing of drivers. It is important that we move from what is a constitutional promise to what needs to be a social reality. This means confronting structural, societal, and systematic failures that continue to compromise women's safety and equality. We need clear, actionable policy implementation that leaves zero room for bureaucratic hesitation. The state must stop treating school related gender based violence and gender based violence broadly as a secondary budgetary item. Intentional planning means immediately ring fencing funding for comprehensive and independent school related gender based violence and gender based violence reporting mechanisms, security, and psychosocial support. Experience and exposure to violence in any environment at a young age increases the risk of later victimization, as well as perpetration of violence and other antisocial behavior. Schools, if considered holistically, are environments where children not only acquire scholastic knowledge, but also where they learn who to be, what to do, and how to live together. However, violence in schools impacts negatively all these processes, creating instead a place where children learn fear and distrust, where they develop distorted perceptions of identity, self, and self worth, where they acquire negative social capital. And therefore, it is important that school safety.
You need to wrap up.
Definitely. It is then important that school safety is a fundamental preconditioning for learning um, than being an afterthought or an addition. True honor of our women heroes is ensuring that girls of 2026 finally inherit the safe, dignified education our heroes fought and advocated for 70 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vila Sandy. Now I want to bring Cameron Jacobs into the discussion. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, honourable members. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Cameron Jacobs. I represent the Commission for Gender Equality. As some of you may know, and some of you may not know, the CGE, we are Chapter 9 institution of the Constitution. That means that we are independent. We do not form part of government. We are recognized as a state institution. And our fundamental mandate is to promote the respect for gender equality and the protection, development, and attainment of gender equality. And we do that in a variety of ways. Through monitoring and evaluation of policies and practices of both governments as well as private sector, through advocacy, particularly gender mainstreaming and gender and development information sessions. We also have the mandate and the power to conduct investigations, either upon receipt or own accord. And we do a host of body of research around gender equality and gender equity in the country. And then we also monitor the compliance with international legal framework. Now, it's a very difficult discussion that we're having. I've got 5.5 minutes. Because I think a cruel irony exists in South Africa. We look at our constitution. Globally, it's one of the most progressive constitutions in the world. It's human rights centered. Previous speakers spoke about Section 9, the right to equality, Section 10, right to dignity, Section 12, freedom and security of the person, there's Section 14, the right to privacy, and then there's economic and social rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights, the right to housing, right to education, which is an unqualified right, water and sanitation, food, right to environment. And attached to these rights, there are fundamental values enshrined in Section 1 of the Constitution. The right includes human dignity, achievement of equality, advancement of human rights and freedoms, non-racialism and non-sexism. And then in Section 7.2 of our Constitution, it specifically states that the state must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights. Bill of Rights also speaks about the progressive realization of the rights in the Bill of Rights. And I'm using this quite broadly now because I think often we make the mistake of seeing gender-based violence in isolation from everything else. And I think that's a big mistake. But the fact of the matter is that in South Africa, despite our fantastic constitution, we have the highest gender-based violence in the world. So how do you reconcile this fantastic progressive constitution that we have with the actual reality, the lived reality of many people in our country? There's certainly no lack of legislation either. Right? We heard in the previous session about some of the legislation. We've got the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide as well, with this Domestic Violence Act, Sexual Offences Act. Statistics by the Minister of Police yesterday showed that gender-based violence increased. Right? Despite the fact that certain violent crimes have decreased, gender-based violence has increased. So we have this legislation, but we know, and I don't want to repeat it because we all know it, and sometimes it's very difficult for me, how many months did I have? 2.5 months. Very difficult for me to be here. Because I can tell you, and you all know, there's underreporting of GBV cases, there's delays in prosecutions and convictions, there's limited access to support, there's institutional bottlenecks. And honestly speaking, from my perspective, the real problem is that we do not understand the implementation environment. And that is one of the reasons why we constantly have this legislation overlay on other legislation, but not understanding the implementation environment.
So the questions that I want to leave with you, because I only got 2 minutes and 24 seconds, is one, have we betrayed the fundamental rights and values of the Constitution? Or have we ever internalized and actualized them? How much time as a country in our past 30 years have we actually spent internalizing and actualizing the rights and values? We speak about it in every forum that we go to. We can speak about Section 10, Section 1, Section 7, 2, blah, blah, blah. But have we actually internalized them as a country? The second question I want to raise is, have we framed the problem correctly? So we speak about gender-based violence as a national disaster. Really, is it a national disaster? Do we really think it's a national disaster? Because a disaster comes and goes. It's finite, right? COVID came, we declared it as a national disaster. We settled the matter. If it's a flood in KZN, disaster, we settle the matter. So easily, have we framed the problem correctly? Because for me, the problem is chronic. For me, it is a culture. It's not a disaster, it is a culture. And until we frame the problem correctly, ladies and gentlemen and honorable members, we're not going to solve the problem. Right? This is actually quite intimidating, the time. So what system are we fighting? In the first session, we spoke about 1956. Women marched and they fought a system. What system are we fighting now? Have we asked ourselves that question? Because again, that's part of framing the problem correctly. So I think that part of our problem is that we do not understand the implementation environment. The previous speaker spoke here about the community, right? But you look at the recent statistics. Distrust by communities in government is increasing. If we look at our society, xenophobia is increasing. If we look at our society, racist discourse is increasing. And this is all part and parcel of the bigger problem that we have in our society, right? When you look at the 2024 HRC statistics as well, and that's again another eye-opener, just what people actually are thinking about it, right? How much men, the percentage of men that feel that they must obey their husbands, the percentage of men that feel, I know, ma'am, my time is up, percentage of men that feel that it would be embarrassing if your child is gay. Because remember, gender-based violence is not just about women, it's about, right? What I want to leave with you today, because my time is up, is that I really firmly believe that part of the problem that we need to confront is we need to go back to our Constitution. We need to start and continue and think about a campaign around the fundamental rights and values of the Constitution and the constitutional principles of our Constitution. So we can start, because the Constitution aspires us to live as a particular nation, as a particular society, and to live that on a daily basis. In my honest view, we're not living that as a society. And we need to go back to the Constitution after 30 years of trying to work out how we're going to, but we need to practice those constitutional values. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cameron. And that brings me to Renee Botha. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to stand up because it feels like I sit very far there at the back from the mic. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, colleagues, yeah, at the back as well, and most importantly, all representatives of community, civil society. I'm Renee Botha. I'm from the Western Cape Department of Social Development, and I work specifically in the program called Victim Empowerment. In the Department of Social Development, we've got a basket of services addressing social ills and providing services for vulnerable groups. And my program specifically looks at provision of services to victims of gender-based violence. I'm sure we all agree after listening to all of the presentations today that South Africa does not have a shortage of laws protecting women
and children. We have a constitution that promises equality, dignity, and security. We have legislation addressing domestic violence, sexual offences, and there were some amendments that happened quite recently. And a very important document that's also guiding our journey in addressing gender-based violence is the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. One of the things that I feel that we've done so well so far is we've started to become more survivor focused, or as we call it in our world, victim centered. We have sexual offences courts. We've got Advocate Abdul here that talked about the Tutuzela care centers. We've got shelters and we've got victim support services. So we have all these mechanisms. Then we have one question. Are women actually experiencing the rights that we have promised them? Because a right that exists on paper but cannot be accessed in practice is an incomplete promise. And that is the space I want to explore today, the gap between having the right and being able to exercise those rights. We have made progress. Let me acknowledge the progress first. South Africa's legislative and policy framework has developed significantly. Sexual offences courts are an important example. They recognize that sexual offences require specialized justice response and seek to reduce secondary victimization and improve the experience of vulnerable witnesses. For a survivor, however, access to justice is not simply about having a court. It is about how she is experiencing the justice process. Does she understand what is happening? Does she receive appropriate support? Can she participate without unnecessary trauma? These are not merely operational questions. They are questions about access to rights. The same applies to the Tutuzela Care Centers and the Kusaleka One Stop Center at Sarki Bartman Center. The One Stop Center model brings different services together all around the survivor, including medical care, psychosocial support, SAPS, police services, forensic processes, prosecution, and court preparation. This is an important shift. A survivor should not have to become the coordinator of her own trauma. She should not have to move from one door to another, repeatedly telling her story and trying to determine which department is responsible for what. The system should coordinate around her. That is the promise of a survivor-centered response. But then we have to ask the next question. Is that experience available for every survivor? What about the woman who lives far from a TCC? The woman who requires disability-related support? The woman who needs longer-term psychosocial assistance? The woman who needs safe accommodation but encounters barriers to accessing a shelter? This is where the gap between policy and lived experiences become visible. Now for an uncomfortable statement. We cannot legislate ourselves out of GBV. Our laws are essential. A law can criminalize conduct. A court can hold an offender accountable. A protection order can provide legal protection. A Tutuzela care center can provide an integrated response. But legislation on its own cannot change harmful societal norms, unequal power relationships, economic dependency, and attitudes towards women and children, or the behaviors that allow violence to continue. That is why the NSP, the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence, is so important. It takes us beyond asking how do we respond when violence happens. It rather asks how do we prevent violence in the first place? How do we change the attitudes and behaviors that normalize violence? How do we empower women economically? How do we strengthen families? How do we ensure that boys and men become part of the solution? The law is a critical part of the solution, but not the whole solution. This is where my own area of work becomes particularly relevant. In the Western Cape Department of Social Development, the Victim Empowerment Program, we work with partners, including SAPS, Justice, Health, Civil Society, and others. We have provincial and regional structures where we identify gaps, strengthen coordination, and ask difficult questions about the quality and accessibility of services. We support services including psychosocial support services like the trauma center, victim empowerment and safe accommodation through shelters. But there is something our work has taught us. The survivor does not experience our department separately. She experiences one system. She doesn't say, today I need DSD, tomorrow I need justice. She simply says, I need help. And this is where coordination becomes more than a meeting or a referral letter. If we refer a survivor from one organization to another, but she never receives the services she needs, the system may have completed its administrative processes, but for that woman, the system has failed. So a referral is not an outcome. A successful referral is an outcome. I have to see, I've got 11 seconds left, so let me skip to the end. So in South Africa, we have made significant progress. We have the constitution, we have legislation, we have the NSP, we have sexual offences court. All of that is progress, but progress cannot become complacency. Because for the women who cannot access a shelter, the existence of a shelter means very little. For the survivor who is referred repeatedly but never receives help, a referral system means very little. And for the woman who knows she has the rights but cannot exercise them, constitutional protection remains incomplete. What we must change so that equality, dignity, safety, and freedom become the everyday reality of every woman is the whole of society approach. And that's why we need the young people in the room, to take over from us ultimately and lead. I'm looking forward to this future where young people can fulfill that promise. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Renee. I want to say that I've got a few questions for each one of you, but in your presentations, you did answer it. So that I'm going to ask now for each one 2 questions. Phyllis Sandy, what is the single most important intervention you believe we should prioritize to prevent GBV among young people?
Thank you for that question. Um, as I said in my presentation, I think the most important thing at this point in time is really budgeting for gender-based violence in South Africa. We speak about it, we advocate about it, we dub it as a national disaster, but where is the funding to address that national disaster? Which laws are in place to address that national disaster? So instead of treating it as a secondary commodity or what it is not, we need to put it at the forefront. And when we talk, when Treasury sits and talks about the priorities of the country, gender-based violence should be at the top of that list.
Thank you so much. And then to Cameron, what is the most important institutional change required to strengthen gender equality and prevent violence against women?
Um, that's a very difficult question to answer, to be quite honest with you. So I'm going to try and frame it like this. And it may be a little bit of a long-winded answer, but you got to wonder whether institutions firstly are fit for purpose. When one experiences, or society like ours experience legislation after legislation, policy after policy, and yet when we're looking at the challenges are still there. So we know, for example, issue with forensics, DNA testing, right? Forensic labs. That has been a challenge that has been with us for many, many years. And we have a policy, or we have a legislative framework, or we try to tighten it, but you still have a problem with your forensic lab, right? Same with the NPA, and many other institutions. So my answer to that, and it may not fulfill your requirement here,
But I would want to actually ask the question, are institutions firstly and foremostly fit for purpose, and to assess whether institutions are fit for purpose. Once we have that in place, form will then follow function. But I think we always make the assumption that institutions are ready to implement what they need to implement, and I don't think that that is necessarily the case. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Then to Renee, what is the most important intervention from a social development perspective?
Thank you, Vanessa. I think from specifically, if I can talk from a victim empowerment perspective, I think what we need to get right, and I'm so happy that our new minister also referred to it, was collaboration. I think the one thing that we've learned is that when it comes to addressing gender-based violence, we need to work together. None of us have got the sole answer, to provide services. And I always refer to the example that we had in during COVID, because it forced us to work together. And we had an example of remember gender-based violence, even the president called it the second pandemic. And we had an example of a victim that was rescued from a very dominant partner who happened to be a very well-known gang leader. And we had to go and hide her in one of our shelters away from the metro. But what that meant is, how are we going to get transport? And now the system kind of had to kick in, because SAPS must now come to the table and to remove her from one point to the next point. Because she was hurt so badly, we had to rely on Department of Health, who actually came to the shelter to help in that instance. So that's such a good example to know that this is not a problem that we can tackle alone. We need our partners, we need our civil society organizations specifically, because they carry the brunt of work specifically for psychosocial support of victims. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to all our panelists. GBV is really a serious problem. And what I've experienced when I visit police stations, the young women, and even though some men come to the station, they report a case and withdraw it again the next morning. So that is a big thing that grapples me, that we must look at that. So with that said, I'm going to hand over back to Benedicta. Thank you so much, Benedicta, and thank you for our panelists again.
Thank you, everyone. And I think it's really important that people are putting in really good suggestions. Now, the administration is taking note of all the issues and the recommendations raised during these discussions. I think it's really important that they all get submitted. That includes people's speeches, suggestions, and submissions. They can be submitted to Kaya here. Kaya, can they use an email? What would be the easiest way to send it through to you? Email? Okay, that's great. So we can keep that as a record. And I'd also now like to give stakeholders an opportunity to submit concrete recommendations to the Western Cape PP to consider within its mandate based on today's deliberations. So let's take 5 specific proposals. There are people online. So let's see how many hands we have in the chamber. I think no more than 3 in the chamber. And then I'm going to take 2 from online. If there are any gaps and people who haven't taken up those 5 opportunities, we can then look to backfill. I've got somebody here, the lady in the brown dress, yourself, sir, and then the lady at the back. So let's take these 3 first, and then we'll see what's online. Thanks. Over to you.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentations. I'm a little bit triggered. I was so triggered throughout this whole conversation, but I'm going to try to make sure I get what I needed to say. So I wanted to ask about what kind of punishment are men facing when they commit crimes related to domestic violence? Because if many men are getting away with it and gender-based violence just keeps increasing. So maybe it's because of the law just doesn't take this matter very seriously. So I wanted to ask, because sometimes you'll find a woman, she will go and report the problem. She'll say, no, let me go and report. And then they'll maybe suggest they do a protection order. After getting a protection order, she'll still be getting emotional abuse from that man, and the man will get away with it. And at the end of the day, that protection order is not going to protect her 100%. Something might happen to her. That man might even kill her. So, and also another thing is, I don't know if in the room we do also have like religious leaders. Um, you play a very big role in the community, in the society. Once a woman comes to you and tells you that my husband is doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't have to suggest to that woman to stay in that marriage. You need to, they need to be well educated about this kind of matters of abuse. And they need to really see how they're going to be protecting women more. Because once women are not being protected, men will continue to abuse women. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I can hand over to the gentleman.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
sorry, just a second, Minister Marais, your mic, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for this great opportunity to stand here. I would like to say this just before I introduce myself and my few points. Thank you for making this parliament accessible to the real people on the ground. I don't mean it in a bad way when I'm saying real people in the ground. I mean in a sense that, where the actual activities are, this is where it matters the most. Most of the people that come here, they come with escorts, they are protected and all of that. It's part of the perks. I understand that. Where it matters the most, where it pains the most, there isn't this protection. There isn't this politics and constitutions and whatever. So thank you. My name is Ntsikelelo Poswa. I'm a pastor from LLFL International Ministries, and this is my pretty wife. We are together in the ministry. Please, with all due respect, to give a big round of applause. There's a reason I'm saying that. She's been a great support and pillar, taking from my mother. There's a reason why I'm saying that. It's a pity that there isn't time for that now. Right. We recently, in our church, we recently had a women's conference where we honored women that make real tangible contribution in their societies. They are not known by the government, some of them. They are not famous people, but they really make the impact. So when we had this conference, we had to honor them, we had to give them flowers and appreciate the work that they are doing. Right. As I said, I'm a pastor. Allow me just to give you a 1 minute CV of who I am, and I will tell you why I'm telling you my CV. I'm a pastor for more than 20 years now. And then in the process of being a pastor, I realized that more than praying for people, you need a skill on how to actually deal with their actual problems in terms of interactions and counseling. So I ended up going to varsity. When I was there, we were tasked to do some study. So I went to this NGO. Some of you may probably know it. It's called Sanka. They deal with drugs and alcohol. So when I went there, I ended up having a relationship with that organization, and they requested the spiritual side to that organization. So I ended up volunteering there. So in the process, I had to meet young boys. There were young girls, yes, it's true, but I met a lot of young boys as young as 12, 11, 12 years who were abusing substances. And most of them, they will tell you that I don't know why I'm so angry. Maybe it's because my father was never there. And when you look at these young boys, most of them they are raised by their mothers. So now where is the problem? If we are going to say, what is the punishment for these men? What is the punishment for these men? In my view, we are not going down to the problem where it starts. It starts in the families, right? A mother is the mother to that young boy. When the mother gets to know that his son did 1, 2, 3 in the community, because of the pain, in course, I think they use the term inimba, feeling that motherly instinct that this is my child. No matter what he did, but this is my child. In some ways or another, she would want to protect her son. It means we are not solving the crime because somebody knows what went wrong, but they are not actually coming up in order to say, my son did 1, 2, 3. So, where is my point? As a pastor, I've had people that came forward to confess, this is what I did, this is what I did. At some point, well, we usually sometimes do prison ministries. So people they would come and say, Pastor, I did 1, 2, 3. I'm arrested and I'm in prison for this, but people don't know that I actually did 1, 2, 3. What is my point? A child, whether it's a boy or girl, is born because of a father and a mother. If a father and a mother are not present in the upbringing of the child, we are going to have a problem. We are creating a monster. I don't care what prisons you build. I don't care what policing system you build or judicial system you build. We are creating a monster. We need to go to the grassroots level. One of our jobs, myself and my wife, is to encourage healthy families, healthy marriages, and of which I pray to God, the God of heaven, that He will help us to get the government involved, get the children involved, have some activities where we'll get the politicians. To some degree, this may inspire even young kids. And I'm so grateful to God the Father for seeing young, beautiful faces that are present here. And I pray that next time when we have such discussions, we also include young boys so that they understand the kind of pain that their mothers, that their sisters, that their siblings, that their relatives are feeling out there when they perpetrate these activities. But what is the main point that I'm bringing? We need to get everyone involved. We need men, we need women, we need young children, because in order for us to have all of these problems, like we have a great constitution, we have a great judicial system. Where is the problem then if there is no justice? The problem is one. It is because not everyone is involved. The problem is in-house. The problem is because somebody knows who did what where, but they decided to keep quiet. Lastly, before I sit down, I come from Delft. I've been staying there for just over a year now. But before then, I was staying in Khayelitsha. I could tell the difference between the two spaces. This is then the way the spiritual aspect comes in, where you can tell that in this area, this is the biggest problem. In that area, this is where the biggest problem. In Delft, where I'm staying currently, the biggest problem is this, and I'm begging for help, and I'm grateful to God for answering my prayer so that I get this opportunity, because I've been talking to my wife, I've been crying, and I've been praying to God. Young children do not go to school. I need to know what needs to happen. From preschool level, primary school level to high school level, they don't go to school. Their SASSA monies, I ask my wife every day, what happens to their SASSA monies? Because they are in drugs, there is violence because they don't go to school. Some of them, quite literally, in a short space we've been staying there, they literally grow up there. They hold knives, they take from one another. And the biggest problem that I have, some of them, they commit daylight robberies, and community members are quiet. So we ask ourselves, myself and my wife, where do we report? Because you go to the police station, it's going to be one of those. Is in, then tomorrow is out. Lastly, so far, I have seen some of the houses, and this is where I'm going to beg the Minister of Police to please help me. I've seen some of the houses, some activities that you feel to yourself, I have seen what is going on there, but I don't have concrete evidence. This is where you need professionals. But do I go to Delft police station, or am I going to find myself in trouble at the end of the day? So where do I report such activities so that somebody goes there to investigate in a proper manner? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pastor. And I must say, when I was working in the courts as an attorney, when we often had children with issues dealing with drugs, dealing with violence, the narrative from the mother almost invariably would be, it's not my child, mine is a good child, it's his friends. And moms need to step up and realize that sometimes your kid is also the problem. I've got the young lady there at the back in the black with the pink.
Just one moment. I would never want to interrupt the lady, but I feel it will be very wrong of me to just leave at this moment. I've established that I'm unable to cut myself into two. Anyone else have that problem? So I'm unable to cut myself into two, as many of you would be aware. So please, I would need to excuse myself due to my next engagement. Um, Otherwise, some people will be very angry at me. But once again, thank you for being here. You are in the capable hands of Benedicta and Kaya and the entire team. And I trust that I will see you again. Mfundis, I'm going to walk out that side. I just need 1 minute of your time. So once again, please excuse me. You may go ahead. Benedicta, baie dankie. Yes.
Great. If I can hand to the young lady at the back.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lonwabo, and I live in Easter River.
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. Can someone just turn off the pastor's mic and then just press the button on your mic? You've got that. There we go.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lonwabo. I'm from Easter River, and I want to raise a topic and a point that hasn't been raised enough here. It's the healthcare system and how it affects the young women and girls and women in general that need medical care. Um, Healthcare is underdeveloped in the terms of women autonomy. It is understudied and affects women and girls. Everyone has the right to good quality healthcare, yet women receive the bare minimum. And by the bare minimum, I mean important medical things that lack medical safety for women. So things like prevention, for example, like birth pills, how many side effects there are, so many like effects rather than it just being one thing and helping with one thing. Um, Also things like termination when it's the point where a woman is pregnant and the country doesn't have the the ability to help her go through abortion, or like it's not safe enough, or it's that she feels the stigma of abortion. She's not in a safe space, sorry. She's not in a safe environment enough to terminate the baby because she knows how how much hatred comes with it, how much backlash she will face after she does it. And also another point that I wanted to raise was how accessible drugs are in communities like Nyanga, Easter River, Guguletu, Bonteville, and how it pulls the youth down. You like the young boys, the young girls, how easy it is to get it and to use it and often use it and often use it, and it creates such hatred in their hearts that it it contributes to gender-based violence emotionally and physically. They emotionally abuse their parents because they know that the mother will find out soon enough. Eventually the mother will find out that my child is using these certain substances, and it will tear down the family. With that tearing down the family, the child will have such hatred for family, creating when it's time for them to extend themselves and be out there and have their own families, they'll have this hatred towards a family bond and like have that hatred of women and be so violent because like drugs are so accessible in communities. A child can start slow, can start with a cigarette, 1 rand. They can start then off to weed, and then off to cocaine, lean, anything they can find, anything that's in the community. So that's everything that I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go online. I said 2 online. I see we've got 3. I'm sure no one's going to mind if we sneak in the third one. So looking across the room, the first person is marked as DS online. If you'd like to give us your comment, please.
Good morning, fellow youth parliamentarians, coordinators, WCPP members, honoured speaker and guests. My name is Daniela Smith, grade 11 learner from Stellenbosch High School and delegate of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament representing the Cape Wineland District. Gender-based violence and sexual abuse has become an undeniable reality for so many South African women. South Africa already has systems in place to combat gender-based violence. However, the challenge is ensuring that these systems are accessible and effective, especially in disadvantaged and rural communities. Survivors should not have to wait years for justice or struggle to get help. We therefore need strong implementation of existing laws, faster justice processes, and more accessible support systems. Ultimately, having laws is simply not enough. We have seen time and time again that laws and interventions alone will not end gender-based violence. It will only be defeated when all of South Africa takes responsibility for preventing violence, supporting survivors, and ensuring that perpetrators face justice. Secondly, it is of utmost importance to initiate programs where schools in underprivileged communities with high crime, rape, and femicide are targeted, teaching girls about the importance of keeping themselves safe in their communities. Where safe environments aren't guaranteed and parental support isn't always there. This is where civil society can play an important role by working with these schools and communities to provide education, awareness, and support to young girls. Through empowering girls, we can keep them safe and encourage them to speak up. Because how can a girl speak about a problem that has become a norm in her community? It is critical for women's equality and safety in South Africa to improve so that we can protect the livelihoods of millions of women. Charlotte Mazeke, Albertina Sisulu, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and 20,000 other women fought for us. So let's keep fighting for those who can't and keep creating change in our communities to promise a better South Africa for the coming generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You just got a big clap in the chamber. Then we have the next person with the initials online of AM. If you can please give your submission.
Good morning, everyone. I mean, good afternoon. Thank you so much. I'd like to greet everyone here, the Speaker of Parliament, and everyone, all protocol observed. My name is Asonele Melapi. I am a founder of the Nokwanda Patoko Gender-Based Violence Foundation. I am a 5-time award winner, social justice advocate, and gender-based violence activist. I started my organization when my sister was brutally murdered, so I took pain into passion and into purpose. And it's the hardest thing you can ever do if we look into realities. And I just want to go into the speakers that spoke to us. There was Cameron, there was you, met a speaker, and there was a lady that intrigued my interests. I felt that whatever I had prepared was null and void when we don't speak about actual experiences. And to rebuttal those experiences that they shared, I feel that I think in society we have non-preventative approach to something we can prevent. And I feel that our judiciary system should meet the expectations of whatever gender-based violence is in our country. We all call it a national disaster, but is it indefinitely or actually? We must look at the fact that people are murdered. My sister was murdered by a boyfriend of 4 months. Who can anticipate that? No one. So my point is that instead of us looking at what we do after the math, how can we remedy this? Why can't we have domestic violence cases be those of a judiciary system that works? Make it court remanded that these people get psychosocial assistance. They get psychological help. They are obviously not okay. Why are we waiting for them to start from domestic violence to get to murder and then we cry wolf? That is my question. Why? Because this is not only something that had affected me, it had a ripple effect that no one thought about. After my sister was murdered, my father, a year after, died of a broken heart. It was the first thing I've ever seen in my life. And he actually died of it because he was a boxer and a proud man. And it ate him alive and he died. And then after that, my second sister died because she was in a loveless marriage. I never knew because I'm the last born of my family heritage. But on top of that, she knew. You get where I'm going with this. I've lost so much people because of the fact that I don't say what needs to be said. I feel that in our legislature and our judicial system that we have to overlook what is precedent on those domestic violence cases that never see the court roll because prosecutors of the NPA are lazy. We need to start there. That is exactly where it needs to start. Because if you do not punish them when they start, when they end with someone's life. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was very eloquently put. We've got two more hands online. I'm going to take both of them, but then no more after that. So please, the next person has initials of ZN online. Please go ahead.
A very humble greeting to the Deputy Speaker, honorable members, and to all esteemed guests. I am Zatile Ndaonde, a third-year Bachelor of Community Development student at the University of the Western Cape and a recent representative of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament at the 13th Commonwealth Youth Parliament, which was hosted by the Parliament of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia. From April to September 2025, a staggering total of 19,387 rape cases were reported across the country. This figure, however, only scratches the surface, as countless other cases likely remain unreported. Each number in the statistics does not only merely represent an impersonal case, it embodies the painful story of an individual, a daughter, a sister, a mother, or a grandmother whose life has been profoundly impacted by this crime. The root of the ongoing crisis of gender-based violence is not merely a shortage of legal protections. It arises from numerous challenges such as limited resources, a lack of public awareness, persistent social inequalities, and the inconsistent application of existing laws. Societal norms have often normalized violence, embedding patriarchal values and enforcing gender inequalities. This situation is further complicated by staggering unemployment rates, which breed dependency and exacerbate the feelings of powerlessness among victims, while simultaneously granting perpetrators a troubling sense of entitlement. To effectively combat gender-based violence, it is essential to confront these socio-economic challenges alongside reforming legislation. Ignoring such violence not only undermines women's fundamental rights, such as the rights of equality, freedom, and dignity, but it also perpetuates a cycle of victimization. Establishing accountability for offenders and providing robust support for survivors are critical steps in this fight. True progress will only come when law enforcement agencies and the judiciary collaborate effectively, ensuring that laws are not just put in place, but are implemented with consistency and integrity. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Great comment. And now our final input I see online is from somebody with the rather, I think, historic initials of MK. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Masia Kaka, and I represent the Cape Metro for the Western Cape Youth Parliament. Our Constitution promises women equality, dignity, and freedom, but we still have to ask ourselves, why are so many women still living with the reality of gender-based violence? What is missing between the rights we have on paper and the reality that women experience every day? I believe we need education programs that share the real life experiences of those who have faced gender based violence so that young people understand its seriousness and work together to solve it. Alongside this, we should create more self defense and empowerment programs for women of all ages in all areas while continuing to build safer communities. Lastly, I want to leave us with something that President Cyril Ramaphosa once said. So long as this country's women and children live in fear from violence, we cannot regard ourselves as totally free. And I think that is exactly what I want to give to the next generation of girls. Freedom from fear. I want them to grow up knowing that they can walk out of their homes, live their lives, and feel safe. That is the future I hope we can create for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is the end of the submissions. I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank each and every person who is here today, to our speakers, to the people who made comment, to everyone who has participated, to people who maybe didn't actively participate but were here. And I think it's important, A, to remind everyone to send the submissions to Kaya. But secondly, I think what really matters when I say thank you to you all, let this not just be another talk shop. Let's make sure that these comments, speeches, everything that has been said is captured and actually goes somewhere, that we actually see action on the ground that changes the situation. We don't want to be here in 10 years, in 20 years with the same issue. We've come a long way in this country, a very long way, but we still have a long way to go. And let's make sure that engagements like that, like this, take us along that route and we step forward together. I thank you, and I want to hand you back to the administration. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Honourable Van Minen. Just to give a little bit of context about what Member Van Minen said now about this going somewhere. We have the Minister of Police Oversight and Community Safety in our midst. Thank you so much. We know your time is valuable. Well, we know all your time is valuable, actually. Online, we had the Minister for Social Development, Honourable Kaiser Philander. Then we have the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Police Oversight and Community Safety, Honourable Van Minen. We don't yet have a chairperson for social development because the minister was only sworn in last week, Thursday. So there's a vacancy there. But what happens now after this is what happens in terms of the committee and the department is that the Standing Committee from the Western Cape Provincial Parliament holds the department to account on what they have promised to deliver and what they actually deliver. They do that on a quarterly basis. So it's a whole cycle from the State of the Province address that the Premier gives. The Premier gives all the promises, the blueprint for the year, and then each department works out their own plan and the committees hold them to account. So what we do when we engage with the public like this, Beth Marie in the back, very quietly there, has taken note of all the key issues that were raised by every single speaker. Honorable Verminen indicated that you can send submissions to Kaya. Kaya will share his email address with you. And all of those will be consolidated in a report that we send to the Speaker, and it is then referred to the members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Members like Honourable Windvogel, who is in the opposition, can then ask questions to the Minister based on what we have discussed here. Can, in her committees, also raise her hand and hold the department to account. It's also then sent to all the chairpersons and obviously all the ministers, but all the chairpersons, and it will be Honourable Van Minen's job to, at every meeting, ask the minister and the department, what have you done? These are the things that came up. What can we do? So it is everything that was said here today will find its way into the system that is geared or that exists to make every life in this province better. One of the participants said something about not living in a world of fear. I remember there was an article by Professor Amanda Gous about South Africa, and it was called No Country for Women. And it was very sad, and it hit very, very hard. And I don't think in my generation, we're going to fix it. But I really hope that all the young people in this intergenerational discussion will be the people that will get to fix it. In terms of work in the community, as someone mentioned, I just want to point out that we go out throughout the province and deal with civil society stakeholders. Probably between 85 and 90% of those community activist stakeholders are women. And that is incredible. And it shows just what the female contribution to any society is. When we finish, I would like to invite you to join me in the members' dining room when we had our morning refreshments and our tea for some lunch. But before that, well, I want to thank everyone that's here. Thank you, Kaya and his team, for all their hard work. We are having this session next Friday. We are doing 30 years of commemorating the Constitution. You're more than welcome to link in and follow us live. That's also promising to be a very good program. But I want to end by saying that I, Sunel Foucher, undertake to not just be an ambassador, but a fighter. Someone said earlier, a warrior against gender-based violence and femicide in South Africa. And if you would join me, you can all stand up. Thanks. Thank you very much. I'll see you at lunch. Thank you.